Hello, CSC120. We're going to go over Chapter 4 this week. Um, so let me move this aside so we could watch this correctly. All right, so we're going to go over inputs and outputs. Uh, we spoke about pseudocodes, and now we're going to talk about the print and get statements inside of a pseudocode, how you go about uh, writing those. Constants, what a constant is, input and output programs. And we'll talk about, the flowcharts being updated and a little bit about Python as well. So what's a pseudocode print? So for example, if you give a input is information that you give a computer, for example, typing an email. Print, that's to send information to the computer screen. So print doesn't mean that we're printing to a printer per se, but it means we're sending an output. And then in this case, the output is to the screen. So we are saying print, please enter your page. So the output is information from a computer. For example, music from the computer speaker. That's an output. A get is to give information to a computer. For example, get current age. So if you ask someone for a question, you're going to get some information from them. And for example, get current age would be something similar to what is your age? And you're going to get the current age. Concatenation is to join two or more string characters together. The plus symbol meaning determined by use or by the context. So string and characters indicates concatenation when you use the plus symbol. When you use it in a math format, so for example, in numerical format, it indicates a mathematical operation, which is addition. Here's some pseudocode. So here we are going to say print, please enter your age. And then we're going to say get current age. Now remember, pseudocode is not the same as Python code or your code that you're actually going to be programming with. Pseudocode is intended for people to sort of understand your code in a more natural English language. You could combine them as well as, for an output, you say print, your current age is, space, you see how there's a space between here, and then it says plus current age. So that's concatenating. That means we're adding the value of current age to the string right here. So if the user enters 19 for their age, the final output reads your current age is 19. Now remember, this is pseudocode. In actual Python, you'd have to do something a little different, which is casting your integer into a string. So write pseudocode to calculate the number of months in the year. So you would say print, there are 365 days in the year, and 365 integer division 30 is months in a year. That means how many months there are in a year. So what are the results of the following print statements? So if you say print 2 plus 2, what's going to be the answer, right? So line 1 produces 4. Print string value 2 plus string value 2, it's just going to concatenate those two, and it's going to say 22. If you say print string value 2 plus 2, it's going to do the same thing. Okay? So what's a constant? Constant is information stored in a computer that does not change. So you have a naming convention for a constant. The first letter cannot be a number. All letters are capitalized. No camel notations and words separated by underscore characters. So days in year is an example here. So equals 365. That would be our constant. So what that means is, okay, this is our constant and this doesn't change. So we are not going to say days in years plus 1. We cannot do that because this is a constant. Constants are just supposed to static. It's supposed to remain the same. So you can rewrite the previous statement in pseudocode to print the number of months in a year using days in year equals 365. So print there are days in year plus days in a year and days in a year, integer division 30 plus month in a year. So that would give you, there are 365 days in a year and 12 months in a year. And so if you look at Python, you see how the code is just a little bit different. So here you have the string plus, and you're concatenating. Ever since this is an integer, you want to cast it into a string because strings and strings you can concatenate. Plus days in the year and plus, and then you concatenate the integer division as well. So that's how that would work. So in this problem, 4.1, you write pseudocode to calculate the number of miles per gallon that a car gets. The equation is miles per gallon equals num of miles divided by num of gallons. So there's the formula. So we have most of the information that we need. Now we want to write the pseudocode. So we're going to enter. So we're going to ask question. Please print, enter miles driven, and we're going to get the number of miles. Print, enter gallons of gas used, and we're going to get the number of gallons. And now we could determine what are the miles per gallon, which is going to be the num miles divided by num gallons, right? So you see this here. Now, this here is supposed to be num of miles divided by num of gallons. So that's a typo there. So the car guy's mileage equals miles per gallon MPG. The car's gas mileage. Plus, this concatenation, and then we're adding an MPG to the end of it. Create a program to calculate and print out the amount of pay that an employee should be paid. First, identify the input, the goal, and task using what you learned in Chapter 1. So the input is hours worked and the pay rate. So we want to know how many hours you worked and what's your pay rate. And the goal is what's the gross pay. So you have to, the tasks that you have to do are 1, enter hours worked, 2, enter pay rate, 3, calculate gross pay, and 4, print gross pay. First, we start with pseudocode. So we're going to say print enters hours worked, and you get the num of hours. Print enter pay rate, you get the pay rate. And then the gross pay equals the num hours times the pay rate. And you could print your pay, and you're going to concatenate what the gross pay is going to be. Remember, this is pseudocode. It's not Python code. Then, we want to create flowcharts as well. And we went over this before. So you have the oval, the rectangle, and the rhombus. The rhombus is used for input and output statements, while the input-output statements inside the shape. So this is how the flowchart would look for the num miles and the num gallons. So you see that? So this is a rhombus. This is rhombus because we're getting information, and then we're printing. This is the output. Well, we're printing and get. So this is rhombus again, and this is an assignment. So that's why it's a rectangle. And then here we print out the information. And remember, you have to have a start and a stop for flowcharts and for pseudocode. And then here is for the hours worked. So enter hours worked, get num hours. Enter pay rate, get pay rate. And then the gross pay equal num hours times pay rate, etc. So in Python, the pseudocode print statement works as expected. Python has no get statements. Instead, it's an int input. So remember, so you have your input. That's what you're going to use in Python. And we've gone over that in class already, and we've actually used it already. But now we're getting an actual explanation for it. So you could do two of the following things to ask a question and get an input. You could print and then get the input, or you could print an inside of the input. So as you could see here, you could print, please enter your age, and then current age equals int input, Or you could just say, when you combine them together, current age equals int input, and then you say, please enter your age. They both do the same thing. Python requires that concatenated data to be of the same type. This requires modification to the unusual print statements as follows. So that's why if you're going to have a print statement, if here you have a string, you have to have a string over here as well. But current age is not a string, it's an integer. You see, because it got casted into an integer. So it has to be casted back to a string. So that's why you're going to have a string with a string to concatenate. So it's placing an str before current age casts its value as a string, which can be concatenated to print the results. If current age is not cast as a string, Python gives a compile time error message. It's going to be something similar to this. Can't convert int object to string implicitly. So what that means is this here is an int object, an integer. And it's saying it cannot convert this integer into a string. So that's why you have to cast it. Convert the statement to find the number of months in the year. Print there are 365 days in a year, and we're going to cast, right, 365 integer division 30. So that's why we cast it into a string to add it into the print statement in Python. So then you convert the flowchart of problem 4.1 into Python code. And this is what it translates to. So you want to get the miles, and you're asking the question, enter miles driven. Remember, it's an input, and you're casting it into an integer. Enter gallons of gas used. It's an input, and you're casting it into an integer. And now we have miles per gallon equals miles divided by gallons. Print cars gas mileage, miles per gallon, mpg. So you see how we're using a comma here. So commas are different from concatenation. A comma will actually put it in there, even though it is a string, an integer. You could have it that way, but with a comma. You cannot have it like that way with a concatenation. So in conclusion, print output and get input indicate user-computer interaction in pseudocode. Constants do not change their values, unlike variables. Python needs integer input to allow the user to enter integer data into the computer. Use string, the casting string, around a non-string variable to print it within a string. And obviously test your knowledge at the end of the chapter. Do those exercises and learn as much as possible. All right, guys, so this is the end of the PowerPoint presentation. So remember to do the examples, learn as much as possible. My email is keyvan.shahrdar@lsus.edu, and you could call me anytime at 318-453-8082. Thank you and have a great day.